Welcome back to Simply Green Radio here on News Radio 1180 WHAM. Simply Green Radio brought to you by Simply Green Energy and Mr. Rooter Plumbing. I'm so caught up giving that website, mysimplygreenenergy.com. Again, mysimplygreenenergy.com. We are in studio tonight with Maurice Aubry, Mo, the project manager at Simply Green Energy. True story, Pete Maurice, the project manager for renewable energy, and Mr. Rooter Plumbing, specializing in water conservation and its green division. And also Brenna Hartman, a fixie chick and founder of healthyhomesofrochester.com. And joining us in studio tonight, he's been here to listen to our first segment, is Mark Matthews, the Vice President of Sales and Marketing for WindTamer. So, Mark, pleasure to have you here in studio.
Thanks for having me. It's good to be here.
Welcome, Mark.
Thank you.
I will let you guys, I know we do have a caller on hold, but let's first introduce Mark and tell our listeners a little bit about him.
Well, I think that's a great place to start. We can talk a little bit about Mark and what your background is. I mentioned earlier that you have, let me see, I have to read this, 'cause I just can't even spit it out off the top of my head. Some of your background is you have a Bachelor's of Science in Engineering Management and Chemical Engineering. Congratulations on that, by the way.
It was a lot of fun, believe me.
I can't even imagine. But you've also served as a lithium sulfur dioxide cell designer, and I just have to know what that is. Well, I'm dying.
It's interesting because it kind of plays into why we got so interested in the wind is when we were doing a lot of battery designs, as you know, portable electronics, it became smaller and lighter and more energy efficient. And that was really what the sulfur dioxide lithium batteries were based around, is going lighter materials, going very, very small, going really portable. And that's one of the things as we got in. It was great to store energy for us, and for me, it was really exciting to create energy. And that's really what led us to WindTamer and seeing this product, understanding what it can do. It became very, very exciting to think we can create energy and do it in a smaller package. And that's really been the fundamentals of what our business is based on.
All right, before we I wanted to get you in, acclimated with the program, but I want to make sure that this caller doesn't have to wait any longer. Welcome in, Matt. Matt, you have a question about solar energy? Welcome to Simply Green Radio.
Okay, thanks a lot. My question is, with your roof with a southern facing, what's the best angle, especially for upstate New York, for solar panels to be at to receive the most amount of energy from the sun? I was wondering if it's probably like a 5 or 6, 12 pitch, but leave it up to you.
You want to go for that one, Mark?
Yeah, sure.
All right.
Typically,
dive right in.
As far as pitches of the roof, that's not, as a Kimmy, that's not on my base, but we know that there's around a 30-degree angle to the horizon is typically what we shoot for when we do our solar installs. So when we come out and look at it, we put a bracket to get it to that level.
Okay. And if it's all right, may I ask another question?
Go ahead.
Okay. Now, I think I've seen one of the WindTamers heading on, I want to say, over towards Pavilion area.
Yes.
And I've seen it there. It's green and white?
Yes. It looks like a big tulip.
I've just seen the one that's really close to the road. And I've just noticed that I don't see it working that often. And some of the times I look around with heading over with the big wind turbines. Is there a problem with them going down? I mean, there's a lot of maintenance with them. I hear that rumor, but I never heard it for fact.
That one specifically that you're talking about is one of the first ones we put up. It's a development unit that we put up because it was a pretty decent wind site, and we actually do a lot of blade changes and inverter settings on that.
Okay.
Kind of what we're up against is to continually improve the product. And so some of the first installations we have, particularly the green and white ones, which are the very first units we made, we want to go out and try different blade settings. We want to go out and try different inverter settings. So oftentimes what you'll see, if in that particular case, and there's a couple others, if there are issues, it's simply that we're tweaking it and trying to get the most energy out, because wind is variable. So you get a lot of energy when the winds blow hard, so sometimes we will overset the generator to really pull a heavy load off of that, and we may get more energy. It just may not be running as percentage of time, but our goal is to maximize the energy we create over the entire year. So we talk annual energy output because that's the number that really means a lot to the end users if you're talking about return on investment.
Okay. And what does a unit like that run, and outside of getting grants or whatever from the federal government? What's a unit like that run?
Typically, we see those units run anywhere from $25,000 to $35,000. With that, before we get grants, before we look at the state and federal incentives. A lot of it depends on how long a run we have to do conduit-wise, how tall of a pole we're going to do at a specific location. But that gives you a feel for what the total cost is, and then we can get about half of that back through the incentives that are available. So one of our goals at WindTamer, as we continue to do product development, is to continue to drive the cost down to make it more affordable to people. Because I think it was said earlier, a really important point for us is we embrace the incentives, but our goal is to make this as a standalone value proposition for people. So in 2015, 2017, when federal incentives are gone, we want renewable energy to stand on its own 2 feet, and I think we really see a path to get there.
Matt, thanks for the phone call. We appreciate it. That frees up on the line now, 222-1180. Again, that number 222-1180. In studio tonight with Mark Matthews, the Vice President of Sales and Marketing for WindTamer. Go ahead, Mo.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for that. Mark, that site that he was talking about, I remember when I first saw the WindTamers, actually a gentleman by the name of Jerry Brock was the one that kind of introduced me to that, and he brought me over to that, and it was more or less understood that it was kind of a beta site, if you will, and it was very, very intriguing to me how he was capturing the wind and how he was doing it in the 3 different conceptual idea of how it works. Why don't you kind of just run that past us real quick?
Sure. So the WindTamer itself, if you haven't seen one, a lot of people say it looks like a tulip. I prefer a jet engine or something like that. But what it is, it's a duct around a turbine. So you have basically your open 12-bladed or 9-bladed system with a duct around it. What happens is, similar to an airplane, we create lift, or we create a low pressure area right behind the blades when the wind blows. So what that does is, not to get too technical, but there's 3 things that affect the amount of energy we can get out of the wind. The first is the density of the wind, which we can't change. Right. The second is the area of the actual rotor itself, and ideally that's as small as possible because people don't want massive wind turbines in their own personal yards or at their business. And the third is velocity of the wind, and the velocity of the wind is a cubic function, so it really makes any small increase in velocity of the wind, we get a huge return on the energy we can get out of that. So to give you a feel for it, we were down doing wind tunnel tests in Jamestown, and which is actually really cool. Anybody can see these things in a wind tunnel. It's awesome. But one thing that happened is we would take the entire duct off the system, and we'd be right around 30% efficient. We'd put the duct on the system, and we'd get 60% efficiency. So we actually doubled the energy output out of the unit by creating this duct system around it. And it really had a couple other benefits. So when we got into it, I was all about being a lithium battery guy. I'm all about how much energy can I create. And what we found was a lot of people like some other attributes of this type of system. One is that it's an enclosed system. So if ice build up or if a blade were to be break or something were to be thrown into the unit, you have a safety mechanism that allows us to put it on college campuses or in residential areas where kids are out playing. You don't worry so much about blade throw, which is a huge drawback. And the other is noise. We with the multiple blades and a smaller rotor, even though it's spinning faster, we don't have near the whooshing noise that you've had on a lot of the other issues. So from that perspective, it's really important, for the environmental, aspects from the safety and the sound and those type of things allow us to be much more neighborhood friendly than your traditional large systems, which definitely have their place. We're just a different type system than that.
Yeah, absolutely. And it was also explained to me that it was certainly friendly to birds and bats. And I couldn't grasp the concept of the bat theory. What's the deal with where they're friendly to bats?
Oh, this is actually a really, really big issue in wind, and I didn't have an appreciation for it for the first time I heard it. But yeah, so really the concept is this thing looks as a solid structure to an animal. So when you think of a large 3-bladed system, you're talking about majority of its open area. When you put a duct around it, you go to 9 or 12 blades. Now, majority of the area, 90% of the area is actually covered. So they inherently see that as a solid object and avoid it. So we have had, and a lot of it's anecdotal, but we have had a couple studies done at Clarkston where I have a couple of units where they've noticed a significant difference in the amount of wildlife issues with this unit. So
222-1180, the number to call if you want to join in on the conversation. Again, that number 222-1180, in studio with Mark Matthews, the Vice President of Sales and Marketing for WindTamer.
Now, WindTamer's located and headquartered right here in Rochester, New York?
Yes, we just
owned, operated, all that fun stuff. I always like to plug that kind of stuff because we got to take it what we got going on here, right?
Yeah,
it's always exciting.
We have a great space over on Mount Read Boulevard, right next to Kodak, and it's fascinating to us. As obviously we have a huge amount of respect for Kodak, but we're right by their cogeneration plant, a generation plant, and it's fascinating. We have a unit on our roof, And every time a customer comes to our facility and they see the massive plant, and then they see this wind turbine up turning away, it's quite a contrast of the evolution of energy creation over the last 100 years. And it's really visible in 200 yards, away from each other. So it's very cool.
You're pretty quiet over there, Pete.
Well,
He's just trying to soak it all in. I'm just teasing you.
I've got a question. I got a question for Mark, because you're a battery engineer.
That's right. Yeah.
Why? Can I just change the subject for just 30 seconds? Why are they having so much trouble developing batteries for electric cars that'll let me drive 200 or 300 miles instead of 30 or 40 miles? What's the problem?
You're the reason I'm in wind, because that's the question we always got in the battery world.
What's the problem?
Really, what it is there's only size and weight wise. It's this function of how we chase energy density. So as you increase the battery size and you try to make it more active materials, you inherently lose safety. So it's this trade-off of going bigger, more powerful batteries. There's very powerful batteries out there that would work and go a long way, but you sacrifice safety, and that's just a trade-off that can't be made in the car industry. But you'll see, in the battery world, a lot of different improvements that are starting to make that, like the Chevy Volt and those things you're seeing now, where batteries have come a long way with the chemical refinements that make them a safe product for vehicles.
And even when they have the batteries, they're going to have a real recycling issue with all these batteries.
Right. That's right. Just there's a recycling issue, which you're gonna have to pull these back and get the materials out of it. And then there's also what we get really excited about at WindTamer. There's this idea that you're going to need all this extra electricity, and where are we going to get it? And there's going to be a huge demand for increased electricity, and we're going to try to get it in through wind and solar and those type of applications.
222-1180, the number to call if you want to join in on the conversation. Again, that number is 222-1180. This is Simply Green Radio, brought to you by Simply Green Energy and Mr. Rooter Plumbing, a website that you can visit, folks, mysimplygreenenergy.com, mysimplygreenenergy.com. In studio with Maurice Aubry, Mo, Pete Marisi, True Story Pete, and also with Brenna Hartman. And also our guest tonight, Mark Matthews, the Vice President of Sales and Marketing for WindTamer. And also a programming note for you folks, if you're tuning in for the Yankees and the Red Sox, they, of course, are the Sunday night game of the week tonight, and that game can be heard right here on Wham at the top of the hour at 8 o'clock. We do need to cut away for a quick break, but we'll be back with more of Simply Green Radio here on News Radio 1180 WHAM.